Well, I think that the cross-examination has changed everything. So we need to still be aware that it's a very complex situation, that it's about violence, which is hugely important, that there is a power imbalance in these situations between men and women, that people behave badly in these situations under pressure, and they're both actors.
With Amber Heard having recently faced cross-examination by DEPP'S lawyers, we checked in with body language and communications expert Dr Louise Mahler to get her insight into how the trial is going so far.
Talking about her body language, what she does is that she will take a deep breath and then hold it as she speaks. And that's somebody under enormous stress. She will cry, but she's crying with her bottom of her face from here down. And there's no crying with her upper face, which is quite unusual. She closes her eyes and disconnects from people. But what she does with her eyes that is so unusual is that she will close her eyes and then move her head. And then sometimes the eyes are back here, even though the head's moved. And these are unusual things, or closes her eyes, moves, opens, closes, but they're still back there. It's uncoordinated. The head and eyes are out of sync. She flips her mood. So she goes from the crying to, sorry, what did you say? Yeah. And then back to the crying. Again, that's very unusual. She was doing that at the beginning. She's incongruently positive when answering questions about, was he wearing rings? That's right. He always wore rings. And yet that was against her saying that. And it's like, something is just wrong.
He often wears rings.
Not often, Miss Heard. Your words are, I've never known Johnny not to wear rings on every finger.
That is what I testified to.
She sounds bored and disdainful when she's asked the questions. She does a weird voice when she talks about him throwing the phone. She said, oh, no, you don't. And I'm like, that voice isn't right for that situation. She has arrogance in her twisted body at the end, sort of like she's getting into her own skin of her own truth. She believes her truth. And I ask myself, with all of these things that she does, why, if you were an internationally acclaimed actress, would you do this kind of body language and vocal tone that doesn't help your case? And my first thought was that she mentioned, of course, I did everything. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous and I went, oh, yes, because so many people can have drug and alcohol through their life and they're not affected. But of course, there are those of us who are. And long-term drug and alcohol abuse can lead to cognitive process impairment. And some of this body language where things are out of sync would smell of that. She had very manipulative language in the arguments. She elaborated again in the wrong places. So she talked about, he picked up my phone and threw it out the window. And then she'd say it was a side street. You know, it was a little cobbled side street outside the house. We had a little side street. And I'm like, what has this got to do with it about the side street? Again, it's that irrelevance that we go into. She uses universal quantifiers to build up her argument. You know, he'd always smash up my things. The only reason he did things was to destroy my things. These are words that influence us and make us think, oh, this is always the case, the only reason. She's very vague. Her language, again, is very vague about the violence. She says, at some point I felt, or he was kind of holding me. You know, that's not very convincing. And then when she talked about the poo that was on the bed, she said, why would I do that? I wasn't in the mood. I don't find that funny. I was angry. Actually, you just say, no, I didn't do it. You wouldn't go into, I was angry. I don't like that sort of thing. Really? I don't know. That's a lot of omission. I can't remember when he hit me. And then there was the thing about the phones were thrown out the window. And then a couple of minutes later, they're texting. Well, how did that happen? I thought the phones went out the window. That didn't make sense. So all of this kind of manipulative language, leaving things out, adding in words that manipulate, made me think, this is very kind of calculated. She's looking for approval. She's looking for attention, and she's looking for approval. And she's no doubt got it as an incredibly beautiful, world-famous, international artist. She is accustomed to not being called out. And she's being called out here, and she's searching to the jury, to everybody, to Johnny, to whoever she can get. But she is actually facing no longer what she's accustomed to. She's facing a blank wall, and she has to seek more and more strongly to get that attention. The lady cross-examining her, Camille, has been very impressive. Often women will withdraw. I find this working with women in leadership, that will withdraw the air and back off. She has been solid in her confidence and questioning, taking it slowly. I'll ask again. Did you, and I thought to myself, this has been practiced and practiced and practiced for a woman to keep her strength in that situation. And I thought she handled her very well.
The settlement, $7 million to charity, and I intend to fulfill those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Please,
what was
try
your
to
question?
answer my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another.
But I don't. Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
Well, people have said Johnny Depp's not doing an act. We all do an act. Our life is an act. Each of us has an act we have put together over our life, and we call it the authentic us. So maybe some people wouldn't call that an act, but I do. His act is that he has chosen something that many of us could learn in difficulty, which is to maintain a neutrality. It is your strongest position. And he's made that very much easier for himself by looking down. And he said that he won't make eye contact with her. And so that's great reason for him looking down. He's got an excuse for that, because at first we didn't know that. And so that seemed weird. But now we know why. And he looks down, we can't see his eyes, and he remains neutral. There have been times where he's broken into, he couldn't contain it anymore, and he laughed and smiled at her answers. But his looking down, maintaining a neutrality so that we can't actually see his reaction, has been a very strong position for him to take. Often we give away everything that we're thinking about, everything somebody says, and this is weakness.
You know exactly why Mr. Depp won't look back at you, don't you?
I do.
He promised you you would never see his eyes again. Isn't that true?
I don't recall if he said that.
I think that is drug-induced alcohol and violence. No question that that's been there. There's been violence from her to him. It's very hard to find the evidence of violence from him to her. There is violence there, but towards the wall next to her, or hitting the painting next to her. But no evidence of big violence towards her, which is a terrible thing to say in this case because it's very difficult to prove. But I believe that she either has a cognitive impairment or personality disorder. And this is no longer about truth or lies. It's just a very sad situation, and that is devastating in the damage it will do for credibility of others in these sort of cases in the future.